Okay, welcome to the accounting club meeting. This is our first meeting for spring semester. This gentleman is an internal auditor at Schneider Downs in Pittsburgh. That's where I worked for 2 years in Pittsburgh. But anyway, he's a former graduate here at GSW, and he's passed the CPA exam, and I believe he has his MAC also. And he's going to talk a little bit to us about passing the CPA exam and what grad school's all about, and his job, internal auditing. So take it away, Chase.
Thank you, Professor Warther. How's everybody doing? Pretty good?
Oh, yeah.
Glad everybody can make it. I know y'all had some bad weather down there, so I'm glad everybody could make it. I guess we'll start off with just saying thank you for having me. Dr. Bishop, Professor Robinson, Professor Warther, they were all big helps to me whenever I was in school at GSW. So I'm glad I could come here and do this for all of y'all. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop at any time, and I'll stop and answer your question to the best of my ability. I can't see you right now, but Dr. Bishop will let me know if anybody has a question. So I guess we'll get started. If you could go to the next slide. There we go. So a little bit about me. I'm from Leesburg. I went to Lee County High School, graduated class of 2011, attended Georgia Southwestern for 4 years, got my Bachelor's of Business Administration in Accounting, graduated in May of 2015. Played baseball for a couple of years at Georgia Southwestern, and worked for about a year at Chambliss Shepherd Rowan & Associates, which is a CPA firm in Americus. And after graduation, I attended Kennesaw State University, where I got my Master's of Accounting. Graduated in 2016. That was a one-year program. And then life took me to Pittsburgh. So I moved to Pittsburgh with my now wife because she is attending the University of Pittsburgh for a pretty specialized degree. So I found a job, luckily, working at Schneider Downs as an internal auditor. So I guess with that, we'll start by going a little bit more in depth about GSW and my time there. So I played baseball, like I said, for 2 seasons. Played from 11 to 12 season and the 12-13 season. It was a great time. Had a lot of fun playing baseball, but I knew after a couple of years I needed to save some money. I was not making any money, and I needed to get a job. So I worked one summer scouting cotton. That's just was really my first job. And then the next summer, I luckily got an internship at Chambliss Shepherd Rowan & Associates. I was really lucky to get that. Kind of how I obtained that internship was just I called every single CPA firm in Americus, and if you've tried to do that, you know there's about 5, maybe. So I called them all, and then I was like, I better just show up. So I just showed up at all of them, and I said, look, I'll do anything you need me to do. If you need me to file papers, scan copies, answer the phone, I would do anything that they needed. And luckily, I ran into Mr. Bill Shepard at Chambliss Shepherd Rowan & Associates, and he gave me a chance. He said, yeah, sure, we'll use you to, scan copies, which is what I did for 3 months. I didn't do anything but make copies and scan stuff into the internal system. I'm sorry. So that was pretty fun, but not really, until tax season rolled around. Whenever school started back up after the end of the summer, I said, I've enjoyed it. Is there any chance you could work around my schedule so that I can continue working at Chambliss Shepherd Rowan? And he was willing to do that, and I was I worked from May of 2014 through May of 2015. So I did get to have a nice tax season. But a lot of the stuff that I did was scanning copies. I did tax, I did bookkeeping, and compilations, which are compilations are putting the financial statements together for small companies generally. So back to GSW, I graduated with the class of 2015. I graduated cum laude, which was by the skin of my teeth. It actually came down to my final exam in Dr. Bishop's audit class, and I needed to make an A in that class to graduate with honors, and somehow managed to make just enough to graduate with honors. So if I could say anything about my time at GSW, it would be just visit your professors. Whenever I was there, they really went out of their way to make sure that they were available outside of class. So for me, that meant working on my resume, working on cover letters while I was applying to grad schools. Just really the whole applying to grad school process was a lot easier because of the advice and support that I had from Dr. Bishop and Professor Robinson and Professor Warther and all the other professors as well. So I would say get the most out of your classes too, especially if you're thinking about going the CPA route. The classes really directly correlate with the sections of the CPA exam. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but if you really pay attention in class and make sure that you're trying your best to understand the material, it'll make it a lot easier down the road whenever you sit for the CPA exam. So if we could move to the next slide. Okay, so grad school. I personally went to graduate school mainly just to get the 150 semester hours. I mean, that's really the big thing. To be a CPA, you have to have 150 credit hours, as probably most of y'all know. So that was really my biggest reason for going to grad school. You generally, depending on where you go and if you've already attended that college, you have to sit for the GMAT exam, which is a graduate management admissions test, I think. So it's kind of like a standardized exam that you have to sit for. And I used the Kaplan GMAT 800 book. That was what I used. If I could go back and do it again, I'm not sure that I would use that book because it was more for advanced students who already had a pretty good understanding of how the exam was formatted and how it was going to, how it feels whenever you sit to take the exam. So some of the options that I looked at whenever I was applying for grad schools were GSW has the MBA program. That was an option that I considered strongly. Kennesaw State has a 1-year program. UGA has a program. I'm sorry?
Nothing.
Okay. So UGA has a program, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, and there's a lot more schools out there. And those are just the ones that, that I looked at in the state of Georgia. But if you, broaden your horizons, you can look outside of Georgia, and I'm sure you can find many, many more than those. So I personally went to Kennesaw State. It's on the next slide.
Oh, well, how did you make that decision, Chase? What made you choose Kennesaw?
So Kennesaw for me was, I was thinking that I would like to be closer to Atlanta because I thought that Atlanta would have more opportunities for internships. And my plan going into grad school was to try to find a CPA firm that was similar to Chambliss Shepherd Rowland, where I could work and go to school at the same time. And many people at Kennesaw did that, but that's not really, it didn't really work out how I planned it to work out. So there's a lot more bigger firms in Atlanta with more structured internship programs and opportunities. So I want to be closer to that market for CPAs and for students. But it's not necessarily how it worked out for me. It was easy. It was easy to be in contact with those firms because there are a lot in Atlanta. Another thing that I looked at was the 1-year program. I knew that I only needed 1 year to get my extra 30 hours to meet the 150 hour criteria for the CPA certification. So by going to Atlanta, and by going to Kennesaw, I knew that I could get that in 1 year. I think UGA's is also 1 year, but some of the others that I looked at were 2-year programs, and I wasn't interested in spending an extra year whenever only one was necessary. So that's kind of how I decided on Kennesaw. And while I was at Kennesaw, they have a CPA study program that they include with tuition. So the CPA study program that they had whenever I was there last year was CPA study review, and it worked really well for me. I'll talk a little bit more about Roger whenever I talk about the CPA exam, but Kennesaw and a lot of other Master of Accounting programs are starting to do more of an integrated CPA study review where you sit with your professors for a mandatory class and you go through CPA material, and everybody generally takes the exam around the same time. So everybody in the master's program works together on the same section at the same time. So a lot of the Masters of Accounting programs that are out there have that kind of option where the CPA review is integrated with tuition and is integrated with all of your other classes, which I think will be really helpful. And Kennesaw is moving in that direction, but other schools out there already have that. Like, I believe UGA has something similar, and I think Auburn has something similar to that as well. So those are just things to keep in mind whenever if you decide to go the Master of Accounting route. So I used Roger. It was a 1-year program. I did mention those. Other things to look at too whenever you're deciding on master programs are graduate research assistantships. These are really beneficial if you can manage to land one. At Kennesaw, I know they're pretty fierce competitively, and I'm sure that it's the same at all other master's and graduate schools. So if you can apply early, the earlier you apply, the better off you are to have a chance to obtain a graduate research assistant. And if you can have a really good GMAT score as well, that really helps to kind of distinguish yourself from other candidates for the graduate research assistantship. And what a GRA is someone who helps the professors conduct research. So they may help proofread an article that they're going to submit to an accounting journal, or they may help conduct research by going out and, taking surveys or helping facilitate or helping make connections so that the professors can conduct those surveys so that they can further their research. And the last thing that I'll say about Kennesaw was that a lot of the classes were geared towards internal audit, which I didn't know it at the time, but that would come back to be really beneficial for me. Obviously, I'm an internal auditor now, but the IAEP is the Internal Auditing Education Partnership, and that's provided by the IIA, which is the Institute of Internal Auditors, and that's something that Kennesaw has, and that really helped me. And so, if internal audit is a route that you think you might be interested in, that's something that I would definitely look for whenever you're starting to apply to master's programs. So the CPA exam, I began studying for the CPA exam as soon as I got my Roger course review materials, which was November of 2015. So I started studying right away, and I would suggest that if you do plan to attend a master's program, or really as soon as you can apply and be eligible to sit for the CPA exam, I would recommend definitely starting to study for it as soon as possible, because life is going to get in the way, right? So things happen, you move away, you have a family, you start kids. It just makes studying for the CPA exam a little bit harder. I studied for FAR first, which many people consider to be the toughest of the four. FAR is Financial Accounting and Regulation, which is it's really the consolidation of all of your intermediate accounting classes. So intermediate 1, 2, and 3 are really all included in FAR. And my advice for taking FAR first would be to get the hardest one out of the way, because the clock starts ticking as soon as you pass the first one, and you have 18 months to finish all 4. So if you can pass the hardest one first, the one that's going to take the longest amount of time to study for, that's the one that I would take first. And then for me, I took audit next, which wasn't too bad. It was pretty straightforward. And then BEC is Business Environment and Concepts, which is kind of like all of your other core business classes combined into one exam. So there's macroeconomics, there's micro, cost accounting is big in BEC. So those are kind of the things that you'll see in BEC. And the last one that I took was Reg, which regulation is business law and tax. Tax is really the heavy part in Reg, which I really didn't study for Reg as hard as I probably should have. I think I kind of underestimated the tax portion and felt the least comfortable coming out of the Reg exam as the other 3 exams. So just something to think about, which order that you want to take them, if that's the route that you choose to go for the CPA exam. So there are education and experience requirements. I'm not a CPA right now because I don't meet the experience requirement. I've been working at Schneider Downs since September, but it takes 1 year of 1 year of supervised accounting work to meet the criteria for the education. For the experience requirement. So I will be a CPA here in a few months once I meet that 1 year requirement, but I'm not there yet.
Are you applying for a Georgia certificate or a Pennsylvania certificate, or do you know?
That's a great question. So I took all of my exams in Georgia, except for Reg. I took after I moved up to Pittsburgh. But you can apply for a score transfer, which transfers your score to, in my instance, it was transferring them to Pennsylvania. And once I apply for my certification, I'll be certified in Pennsylvania. But I don't think it's too difficult to also have that certification be transferred to Georgia if and when we decide to move back to Georgia. I don't think it'll be too difficult to be certified there as well. But the score transfer was, I think it was $20 or $40, so it really wasn't too bad, and it prevented me from having to retake the exams in Pennsylvania, thankfully. So whenever I mentioned that the exams are directly related to the accounting classes, intermediate is FAR, audit is audit. macro and micro or BC, and so on and so forth. Whenever I studied with Roger, my personal strategy was to listen to the lectures first. So you're going to have to put in a lot of time on the CPA exam, and a lot of that should be focused on getting through the lectures, but especially getting through the questions. The questions are really where a lot of people are make it or break it right there in the questions. So I listened to all the lectures first and then did the questions at the end, and wouldn't sit for the exam until until I felt comfortable with the questions and felt that I had a decent opportunity to pass. But it really comes down to studying as many hours as you can. They say that most people put in somewhere between 300 and 400 hours on the CPA exam. But I don't think I put in quite that many, but it's all about how you feel personally going into the exam. So next we'll talk about, I'm sorry?
Chase, as far as Roger goes, I don't think we've had many speakers talk about him, but from what I understand, he's very energetic and dramatic. Did you enjoy that kind of style, or could you compare that with some of the other choices?
Yeah, so he is, you can go on YouTube and look him up. He's really funny. It definitely makes the lectures more entertaining, and it really kept my attention a little bit better than some of the others that I've heard of. I haven't been through a whole lecture with Becker, but I have heard bits and pieces. And Becker is what most of the big four firms use, which they're all partnered with Becker, I believe, and it has the highest pass rate, I believe. But Roger, for me, really helped because he was energetic and he was interesting and funny, and he's all over the place. He's wired all the time, so it was pretty entertaining, and it kind of made the somewhat boring accounting seem a little more interesting. So it worked for me, and I would recommend looking into Roger if you're interested in taking the CPA exam. So next I'll talk about internal audit. So internal audit was, it was around before 2002, but after 2002, with the fall of Enron and WorldCom and Arthur Anderson, Sarbanes-Oxley law was passed, and part of that law was Sarbanes-Oxley 404. So 404 requires that public companies report on their control environment, and they have to document their internal controls, and that really kind of pushed internal audit more into the spotlight, so to say. But it was around before that. Really, what we do is there's really three main types of audits that we can perform. Those three are compliance, operations, and financial reporting. Compliance is, for example, Title IX compliance. So we have universities who are clients that we go out and we audit their, make sure that they're in compliance with the requirements of Title IX. There's also compliance audits for banks as well. As you can imagine, a heavy regulated industry with lots of compliance loopholes that they have to jump through. Operations would be kind of like making sure that the operations are functioning as they should be, and that there's not a lot of waste where there shouldn't be. And the last one is financial reporting. Financial reporting is really tied back closer to Sarbanes-Oxley, and just making sure that companies are reporting what's accurate, and that there's a strong control environment going into their financial statements, and that it wouldn't be too easy for their financial statements to be manipulated. Some of the things that I've worked on as far as internal audit projects go are compliance and ethics training, Title IX, making sure that athletic departments are in compliance with their NCAA regulations, kind of stuff like that. And then a SOC report, SOC, is a Service Organization Control Report, which is, so service organization may be somebody who handles payroll for a large company, and that large company wants to know, and they want to be sure that the controls that they would have in place if they were performing the payroll are in place at their third party, so that the third party is handling their information the same way that they would if they were handling the payroll or other service. So those are kind of interesting, and those are really what a lot of our engagements are related to, are SOC reports. Internal audit is also well known as being where managers are made. Home Depot and GE, for example, have rotational programs where managers have to go through at least a year or two in internal audit before they can move on to be executive management. That's just something to keep in mind. That's just something that whenever I was learning about internal audit, I thought that was pretty cool and something that I didn't know before. So I mentioned the Institute of Internal Auditors. It's kind of the regulating body for internal auditors, similar to the AICPA is for Certified Public Accounting. And the IIA's certification, the CIA, is similar to the CPA for the AICPA. So the Certified Internal Auditor is kind of the leading certification for internal auditors. And that's kind of what I'm studying for right now, since I just recently passed the CPA exam. So next, talk about my job search. My first accounting career fair was at Kennesaw, and it was a challenge because I knew at the time that I was moving to Pittsburgh. So how can you talk to companies and say, I'm interested in working for you, but do you have a Pittsburgh office? It's kind of challenging to look for a job whenever you're 800 miles away from the end destination. One thing that I would recommend for accounting career fairs, or just make sure you collect a business card of every person you talk to. Maybe try to remember one little thing about each person, so that in your thank you letter you can say, it was great to learn about how your company has grown, or it was great to learn about the services that you provide, or how you grow your employees. Something small that you can remind them of who you are as well. So definitely collect as many business cards as possible, and make sure you send thank you letters within a couple of days. That was something that that I did, and I think it did help, but it would have helped more if I was applying for a job in the Atlanta area. So I always try to look for connections to Pittsburgh, and in my circumstance, one thing that happened was one of the CPA firms was part of a larger organization of CPA firms, and they had an office in Pittsburgh. And so I emailed the partner that I met with and asked her to forward my resume if she could. So it's just small connections where if you can find a way to know where you want to be and to try to find a way there, that's something that kind of helped me. So for my job search, I actually found out about the job through our realtor whenever we were looking for a house in Pittsburgh. And she set me up with a senior manager who works here at Shiner Downs, who luckily was able to give me a telephone interview. And the telephone interview was pretty straightforward. They kind of asked some behavioral questions, but not too many. It was more focused on the resume. And then for me, it was kind of difficult to schedule an office interview because I was 600, 800 miles away, however far. But the office interview, I was in town in Pittsburgh looking for a house, and I just let them know I would be there this weekend, and they worked around their schedule to fit me in for an office interview. And it really worked out well that I was able to sit down with the senior manager and the shareholder in the internal audit practice, and they were kind of interested, especially with the fact that IAEP designation from Kennesaw. Excuse me. So now I'll talk about the job search advice. For me, I would say if I had any advice for the job search, this is on the next slide, by the way. I would just say to be open to anything. For me, that was internal audit. But really before that, it started at Chambliss Shepherd Rowan. I was just willing to do whatever they wanted me to do. If that means taking out the trash, whatever it was. I just wanted to get my foot in the door so that once I'm there, they see that I could add value. Internal audit for me it is my way in the door. And now that I'm here, I really want to capitalize on having a pretty solid foundation and show my value. So just being open to anything, trying your best to build connections and try to find a way to get your foot in the door. I know people who graduated from GSW who've gone into cost accounting, nonprofit, tax. There's people who started in one area and then ended up in tax, which is pretty interesting. So just don't limit yourself. For me, I never would have thought whenever I was going to GSW that I would be an internal auditor in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Never would have imagined. I kind of thought I was going to live my life in South Georgia, but life has other plans. So ways that you could build connections, just volunteering at local events. Whenever I was at Kennesaw, I volunteered at a couple of local events for the IIA. But if you can look around, any kind of CPE training, maybe, just looking into different areas that you think there might be CPAs at who work for larger organizations, if that's where you want to end up. So the IIA, the AICPA may hold CPE training. That's something that you could look into. As far as Americas goes, I know that the Kiwanis and the Rotary Club both meet, I think, on GSW's campus. So if that's something you're interested in, maybe try to volunteer. I don't know if they allow volunteers or what they have going on, but you could always try, do whatever it takes to get your foot in the door, and just network as much as possible. Shake as many hands as possible and collect as many business cards. Just making sure that you always send a thank you letter to anybody who takes time out of their day to talk to you. So now, talk about Schneider Downs. It's the largest Pittsburgh-based CPA firm. There are 2 offices, one in Pittsburgh and one in Columbus, Ohio. I wish there was one in Columbus, Georgia. That'd be pretty nice. So that building right there is the building that I'm sitting in right now. It's downtown Pittsburgh, and it's pretty nice. The travel is something that really interested me, especially with internal audit. I travel kind of a lot, maybe 25% of the time as of right now, but I'm supposed to spend all of April in Ohio. I spent a couple weeks in Denver. So it's just travel is something, if that's something you're interested in, audit or maybe internal audit could be something that you could look into. But the work-life balance in public accounting, this is something that if you're talking to firms at accounting career fairs, this is something that every single one is going to mention. I'm pretty sure I heard it from every firm that I talked to. but it's you kind of have to know what you're getting into. So public accounting, a lot of firms expect you to work really long hours, especially during busy season. Luckily, Shiner Downs hasn't been that way, especially in internal audit. We don't really work. We don't really have a busy season per se, but work-life balance. I think in accounting, especially, you can get as far as you want to go if you put in the time and the effort, and it really just depends on how much time you're willing to invest, and often that comes at a sacrifice to your home life. Luckily, internal audit, Shiner Downs, I generally work 40 to 45 hours a week. So it really hasn't been bad at all. It's 7:06, which is definitely the latest I've been at the office ever. So I'm pretty thankful for that. But, and the London rotation, Shiner Downs also does rotation where we bring in somebody from affiliated London office. It's kind of how I mentioned there's a network of CPA firms. We bring in one of their employees for 6 or 8 weeks at a time, and we also send employees there for 6 or 8 weeks at a time. That's something that is definitely interesting, and I would definitely be interested in. But just things like that are definitely some of the perks of being an accountant and being in a position where your accounting skills are useful no matter where you are. So the last thing
Hey, Chase. Chase, so that your CPA firm does tax and audit work also, but you're just in the internal audit section. So does a firm contact y'all or ask you guys they're outsourcing their internal audit function?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do outsource internal audit, and what that means is that we have employees at Shiner Downs who basically go to one of our clients. They have their own desk at the client, and they have their own laptop at the client, and they basically work for the client 90% of the time. That's definitely something that we do, but I would say we have maybe 4 people who are kind of that devoted to one client. Our internal audit practice, I think, is about 40 people. So a lot of the other stuff that we do is mostly SOC reports and internal audit projects. And these are about organizations who typically don't have an internal audit department. For example, if it's the payroll processing and they're kind of a smaller firm, they may or may not have their own internal audit team. And what they really need is somebody to come in and really they're being requested. Let's say it's the payroll processing center. They're being requested by their clients to have a SOC report so that their client knows that their internal controls are adequate. So we come in and we will issue that report for the payroll processing, which they could then give to their clients to show that they're up to speed with their internal controls and their control environment. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, sure. And the last thing, takeaways. So for me, what I knew whenever I was at Kennesaw was that I needed to be in Pittsburgh. That's where my wife went for school. So I had to put steps in place to achieve my goal. And for me, that meant just meeting as many people as possible and hoping that one of them had a connection to Pittsburgh. That ties hand in hand with networking. For you, if you want to stay around Maracus or Albany area or Macon or Atlanta, it's kind of a small world. You can meet a lot of people who have a lot of really great connections. And connections are definitely the way that jobs become available. I'm sure everybody's heard it's not what you know, it's who you know. And the last thing would be to step out of your comfort zone. for me, that was kind of internal audit. In the beginning, I didn't think that internal audit was something that interested me until I gave it a chance. And once I started to learn more about it, I really thought that it was something that I could be interested in and that I could make a profession out of. So those are the three biggest takeaways. And with that, I'll ask, are there any questions? On the next slide, I think my contact information is available. If you want to contact me, you have any questions, that's my email and LinkedIn account.
Okay.
There you go.
What kind of questions do you guys have?
Hopefully I didn't bore y'all to tears, because internal auditing is not something that you would generally think about whenever you think about accounting as a profession, but it's something that I think has been very beneficial for me, and it could be for one of you as well.
I mean, what I got from like your day-to-day activities, you generally deal with maybe data or information from different firms and kind of go through and see how it correlates with, being in compliance with what it needs to be, and then generate a report.
Right, correct. So external audit was more related to financial statements, and a lot of times we're more interested in either compliance or operations. So those are just something to keep in mind whenever you're comparing external to internal. We go to clients and we look at their information and make sure that what they're doing as far as keeping information secure or making sure that processes are as efficient as possible or that processes are performing as they should. We'll go look at those and make sure that those are adequate, and then we issue a statement on those that they can show to their clients, and their clients can rest assured that they have appropriate controls in place. Any other questions? Well, if you think of anything and you want to email me, Dr. Bishop has my email. LinkedIn, not hard to find. But thank you for having me.
Chase,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was great.
And we'll have a lot of people that watch the online video and
Okay.
the
Well,
online
thank you,
classes.
Chase.
Thanks very much.
Thank y'all. All right,
Okay.
y'all have a good day.